Hello. So for my final presentation, I'm going to look at the argument that Albert Camus makes that suicide is the biggest philosophic problem right now. Well, back when he wrote it, and whether I agree or disagree. Now, before we get into that, I'm just going to kind of put a little back statement on it. Suicide is obviously, for those of you who don't know, suicide is the taking of your own life. And Albert Camus makes that case that suicide is one of the biggest philosophical problems that we currently have, and I'm going to have to say I agree with him for many reasons, but for a couple major ones is that he discusses in this chapter, and we'll go over this in a little bit. He discusses in this chapter about how people just look at the first out that they can get. People don't look at what can get better. They just look at, oh, this is the lowest I've ever been, and the only way out is suicide. Another thing that Camus brings up that the book brings up at the end of the chapter, is that everybody just looks at what the future holds, what tomorrow, what the next day, and he makes a point that yes, everybody has that expiring date or the day that they will move on to, the past life, not the past life, the new life. But he states that you got to look at the present, and for people to think that suicide's right, I kind of understand, but I agree with what he says in this chapter. So we're going to start out. And we're going to start on the first page. So on page 422, he quotes, and I quote, "There is but one true serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Whether judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to the answering the fundamental question of philosophy." End quote. So right there, he's saying is kind of big, is that these people are judging just these people that have gone through, whether it's the death of a family member, a very stressful part of their life. Maybe they feel like they're not worth anything, and that's the only thing they're thinking of, is that, okay, I'm not worth anything. I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to live in this world. And Camus making the point that these people are just basing it off of a couple events and are not looking at, how can I make this better? And he's saying that with philosophy, there is a way that people can look at it and say, okay, we can make this better. I can get over this. We can find a way to kind of make it better on all of us and everybody. So even right on the next page, page 442 in the basic writing of existentialism, he says, and I quote, "On the other hand, I see many people die because they judge that life is not worth living. I see others practically getting killed for the ideas of illusions that give them the reason for living. What is called a reason for living is also an excellent reason for dying." End quote. So right there, that was one of the biggest ones I feel like I found, because they're living in this life where they see all these, whether it's videos or just like pictures or something where someone's writing, hey, you know I feel like there's nothing worth me being here, and that's why the person decided to end their life. But he's saying in that quote that these people have to kind of stop looking at these illusions that, okay, I don't deserve to be here, so I'm just going to end it. When really they have to look at the bigger of it, and that's the philosophy side of it. Camus makes a lot of great points, and he is a man that is trying to help people. When I first read it, I thought it was the other way around, but now reading it, I can understand that he really is trying to get people to understand that suicide is a legitimate philosophical problem, because people go right to suicide. They don't look at anything, whether that's going through personal sorrows, incurable illnesses, death of family, anything. They go right to I don't deserve to be here. And that's not how he wants you to look at it. Sorry for my delay there. Um, at the end of the chapter, as we're kind of looking at the end of it, he kind of he kind of talks about how people just how they under illustrate life, kind of how they look at it, like, you know what, I'm not worth anything. Why should I be here? When really he's trying to get them to understand that no, there's a reason for you to be here. He says it right here, um, and he says, and I quote on page 449, likewise, enduring every day an unillustrated lifetime carries us, but at a moment always comes when we have to carry it. We live on the future tomorrow later on when you have made your way. You will understand when you're old enough. Such irrevocable are wonderful, for after all, it is a matter of dying. Yet a day comes when a man knows or says that he is 30. Thus, he asserts his young, but simultaneously he simulates himself into the realization of time. End quote. So right there, I know that was kind of long. Right there, he just, people are on it. People uh, are saying that their lives are based on tomorrow, later on, and the future, when not really. That's not how it is. They'll look at these events that have occurred to them. Look at the event of, let's just, for an example here, we're going to use the death of a loved one. Okay, they're not looking at the day that happened. Most people then start thinking about, okay, what's the rest of my life going to look like? And to me, that's not right. I know I can understand why people think of that. Like, if they lose, maybe a husband, maybe a father, maybe a sister, maybe a brother, they understand that their future might look different, and to some of them their future will not be good at all, and they think this is it. But in that, he's saying that we need to not just look at the future, but also look at the present day and how we can make our future better by looking at positive things and looking at the ways that we can make this case more realistic, and how we can save people and how we can make people feel like they are worth something, because at the end of the day, people are worth everything. Everybody's the same. I understand that people go through tragedies, people go through deaths of loved ones, maybe very stressful moments, but that doesn't give them the case to end their life. You know, everybody goes through that stress, and Camus says it here perfectly, where people do go through stress, people go through uncurable diseases, people go through deaths, people go through missings, everything, and the first thing they snap to is suicide, because they don't think they have a reason to be here. But that's not true, and Camus makes that point where he says, and so does Starcher, they make that point where they say these people have a reason to live, and they just need to find it. And with philosophy and listening to these readings, hopefully they can find it. This presentation has been, really helpful to me and really eye-opening to me, reading this book, seeing how Camus says all these things, and how Camus states that, we live in this life where suicide is the first answer to anything. Um, and he's saying that that's not true. That's not the way to live. The way to live is to understand that we all have a reason to be here, and we have to find that reason to be here. Um, we have to find why not everything's bad, why not everything's horrible, and there's ways to do that. Back to what I said when he said that in the first page we have to look at the biggest philosophical problem, and that is suicide. And I completely agree with that, because we are seeing many, 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 too many people die from suicide because they just think there's nothing there. Um, and there is something there for everybody to understand. and that there is people there to help. I've been really eye opened by his whole statement on it ever since the first class when we started learning about it. Suicide is a legitimate philosophical problem, and I completely agree with that. And I want more people to understand that there is ways to help. Um, maybe that's not reading this, but understanding that your life isn't worthless because of one event. Your life isn't over because of one event. I understand that if you feel that way at the present time, but you got to look at yourself in the future and say, everything's going to be okay. We're going to find a way out of this. We're going to live in that person's honor. We're going to, you know, we're going to remember that person every day for the person they were. And to understand that and to not just say, okay, my life's worthless. I have nothing to do to live here. But you do. And Camus says that you have a reason to be here. You just need to find that reason. I just want to say thank you so much for a wonderful semester, Professor Carabin. It's been an honor to be in this class. I've learned so much about this, and I hope you really enjoy this video. Thank you.